Welcome to the Better Workday podcast with your host, Niamh Moynihan. In each episode, Niamh shares new insights and practical ideas to help you create a better workday.
Hello, and welcome back to the Better Workday podcast. How are you doing? I am delighted today to have one of my Better Workday champions on with me in the podcast. Let me introduce to you Sinead D'Arcy. Sinead is an early talent strategist and founder of Future Roots. But I met Sinead back when she was working with Irish Distillers when she was head of the Jameson International Graduate Programme, and she was there for 12 years. And the reason I wanted to get Sinead on the podcast, and I will let her do the formal introduction herself in a second. The reason I wanted her on is when we worked together, it was so obvious how much she genuinely cared about the development of the graduates, how much she enjoyed working with people who were early in their career, and just the ideas and the creativity she brought to the role to make sure that experience was beneficial for the organisation, yes, but also for every single individual. And so when I started having guests on the podcast, I just had to have Sinead here. And I know that you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So Sinead, welcome to the Better Workday podcast. How are you doing?
Hello, Niamh. Great to be chatting with you. I'm great.
Good. So let's start by giving people an idea about what you're doing now with Future Roots, which is your own company, and what your work is like, and maybe a little bit more about your background and the experience that led you to setting up Future Roots.
Yeah, so I am an early talent strategist. So basically, I love talent and I love helping people to unlock their potential. So to understand their superpowers. And by doing that, you help organizations unlock the power of its people. And I always believe that people were the roots from which future business success grows. And that's really where the name of Future Roots came from, because, I'm interested in people, talent, and unlocking talent, but in particular, the future roots of organizations, which are that early talent, so graduates, interns, and an increasing focus on apprenticeships as well. So I help employers in my role as an early talent strategist in creating graduate programs, internships, or apprenticeships. So people will come to me with questions like, I've been tasked to set up a graduate program. Where do I start? How do I create a selling deck for my senior leadership team so I can get the budget and the resource I need to do this? Other clients would come to me, or partners would come to me and say, we have a graduate program, but there seems to be a changing expectation among graduates. I don't really understand it. Can you help me understand the generation? And of course, they are Gen Z or Centennials. Somebody else then might come to me and say, we have a graduate program. We feel like we're doing a good job in attracting them in, but we actually don't have a structured development program. Can you help us shape that? Or another popular one right now is we have a graduate program, but our managers don't know how to get the best out of the graduates. There's a lot of frustration. Can you help our managers understand how to unlock the talent of this generation? So that's kind of some of the things that people come to me looking for. I've been in early talent, early careers for 20 years now, which is scary to say out loud. I started off in Ericsson, set up their program many years ago, then moved to Ulster Bank and ran their graduate program and set up an internship program for them. And then actually went to Irish Distillers and had 12 very happy years there as head of the Jameson International Brand Ambassador program. But there's always been that kind of love for talent and love, like I said, for growing potential and unlocking people's superpowers. So that's how I got to where I am, and that's what I do today with employers. That full 360 experience from the candidate journey. So how do you attract them in, to the employee journey? How do you develop them and retain them? So wherever the pain point is for an employer, I can help them with that.
That's brilliant. And talking to you, I can feel the passion. I can feel how much you enjoy the work. And, I just think that's a huge part of getting to a better work day. And we'll talk about that in a second. But before we do, it's so interesting. You're the first person who's used the word centennials to me. And that just shows how much you're thinking about the future roots. Like everyone talks about the other generations, and it's just so nice to see that you do keep an eye on everything, and that you're trying to support people that are coming through. And the other thing that I think we should get into actually on this episode is this idea of how can the managers support the graduates, because I've met a lot of young people early in their career and they've got so much potential, so much talent. They want to do so much and they're going to be fantastic. But if they don't have the management or the support that they need, that could go in any direction. So I'd like to get a little bit into that in a second. Before we do that, what does a better workday mean to you, Sinead?
Wow. Well, that's a big question, really, isn't it? It seems like a simple question, but it's actually quite a big question. And I suppose what a better workday means for me probably changed over the years. So I was a team member, I was a manager, a leader, and now a business owner. So I suppose early in my career, what did it mean to me? It was probably about getting stuff done.
Yeah.
Probably about delivery and productivity. And making sure that I could show my boss or my manager that I could get stuff done, that I was capable. And that probably then evolved into, doing more tasks, wanting more projects, taking on more responsibility. And I suppose I went through a phase where it was like about more, more, more. And that was what a good work day was about. Like, give me more work, give me more responsibility. And I suppose at that point, it probably when I think about it, too much focus on the inbox and thinking that, emails were work, and making
Yeah.
sure that I got through them. Emails equal work. But actually, then I suppose you move on, don't you, in your career and to understanding how to work smarter, not harder. And I really started to think about work through a more strategic lens.
Mm.
And meaningful work to me then was about moving away from emails, and it was about project work, meaningful project work that changed the dial for me in terms of skills I was learning, or changed the dial for my team or for the company that I was working with. I began at that point probably to think about, what am I good at?
Yeah.
What do I enjoy doing? And I just focus on doing more of that because that's what I was hired to do in terms of add value to the organization by using my super strengths. And then where there were gaps, bring in others like yourself to collaborate with or connect with
Mm.
other people who had those right skills. And I suppose today now as a business owner, it really is a better work day for me is about fulfillment and it's about happiness. And a better work day for me now is probably more about output than input. It's not about the amount of hours I work. It's about the quality of the output that I do, the quality of the partnerships and the relationships that I have. And I remember but at a training, God, years ago. And sometimes you remember things stand out for you and stick with you.
Yeah.
That when you go to training sessions. And I remember learning about the 80-20 rule for the first time.
Right.
And like 80% of results come from 20% of the effort. And that those vital kind of significant tasks give you the most learning and the most impact and obviously help with your career progression. And then of course after that I read Eat That Frog, the book,
Oh
and
yeah.
that further consolidated that by getting the big tasks done, those larger tasks, you have that greater learning, greater success, greater opportunity for progression. And then I kind of learned that really, for me, a better workday isn't about managing my time, it's about managing me.
Oh, yay. Well, this is why we love to chat. But yes, that is exactly it. It's all about self management, not time management. And it's funny when you go through your career like that, isn't it interesting to see how it changes and develops over time? Of course, when you're early in your career, you do have to focus on getting things done because that's how you learn. And then that allows you to change your perspective. And when we talk about the 80-20 principle, you can't get away from it because it's everywhere. But I sometimes think people forget that when you're starting out in your career, and you might even be finding this now as your new business is taking off, and I know it's really, really successful even so far, that you have to put in 80% of the activity will help you find the 20% actions that will drive you forward. So when you're early career, the 80% of that stuff is actually very, very important because that's almost like the foundation that will build those 20% skills later on in your career. And that's what allows you to change over time, if that makes sense. So I really like that. And I do love Eat the Frog, but I'll be honest, I never eat the frog. I start the day off with like the equivalent of like an ice cream and like I ease into my day and then I kind of approach the frog once I feel like I'm a little bit happier.
Mm.
So, they'd kill me now if they had me on it. But like we all have our own preference, isn't it? So
Exactly.
so so tell me this, right? So we touched on managers just a second ago, but I think is a big difference between experienced managers and first time managers. And I'd love to understand if you see any challenges in creating a better workday if you're in that role as a first time manager, maybe as opposed to a more experienced manager.
Yeah, so look, the role of the manager is key. So it
Yeah.
is. So when we talk, a lot of employers come to me and talk to me about retention. How do we keep these guys? So one of the legs in the stool as to how you keep, any talent, but in particular early talent, is the manager and the role the manager plays. So people in work have lots of relationships. They have, peer relationships, buddy relationships, they may have mentoring relationships. But the most important and influential role in terms of productivity, engagement, happiness, and then just retaining people is the manager.
Yeah.
So, managers play a key role in organizational success. And also, like, I've had some wonderful managers, as I'm sure you have had over the years, and they have helped me personally to grow and
Yeah.
given me really good advice. But whether you're an experienced manager or a first time manager, um, managers tend to be time poor. We see in research a lot them referred to as like the squeeze middle.
Mhm.
Because they're trying to balance their workload, their people management responsibilities, leadership responsibilities or demands. And typically, first time managers can be the managers of early talent. And that's where organizations bring me in then to do some training with those managers to help them understand early talent, but also understand their role in
Very good.
managing and getting the most out of them. And I suppose, like managers, when we think of it, it's very hard being a manager in the current work context. Again, if it's first time or experienced, you're managing diverse personalities, abilities, experience levels, different generations now. There's 4 generations in the workplace. We have boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, which are millennials, which we all know a lot about. And then, of course, the newest entrants to the workforce, who are Gen Z and Centennials that we mentioned earlier. And they all come with their own set of different expectations. Then, if you layer that on with the change that's still happening in terms of work models,
Yeah.
managers have to manage that too, like how to make sure their teams feel connected, that they
Yeah.
feel like they have a purpose, that they're all rowing in the same direction towards the same goal, etc., that they're engaged. And then, of course, managers have to deal with these new technologies that are coming our way. AI has had a massive influence on all of our ways of working over the last 12 months. And what I feel working with organizations and managers at all levels right now is they're expected to do more with less. And, it really is a very difficult time to be a manager. But when we talk about the retention piece for employees, there was a Stanford study that found that 25% of employees that were surveyed rated their managers as poor communicators.
Oh,
And we know that communication is the foundation of any good relationship in business. And so these managers really need support as first time managers. It's like as if when you're told you're going to be a manager, a switch should be turned on in HR that says, okay, now this person needs some help. They need
yeah.
training in how to set clear KPIs, how to have development conversations, how to deliver constructive feedback, how to manage their own time and balance between the doing and the managing. There's just so many opportunities. Mentoring is very important for first time managers as well. And then fostering that culture of continuous feedback and development so that they can help their people succeed. They can achieve, the KPIs that their team are set within the timelines that are set, but also that they help themselves to achieve and to progress. I think sometimes managers feel like I'm helping my team to progress and to succeed, but what about me? Who's
Yeah.
helping me to succeed? And that's where, HR and organizations can make sure they do that by giving sufficient training, especially to first time managers. And just to finish on this point, like, from my own experience, I literally remember very vividly when I became a first time manager. Now, I love people. Like I said, I love talent. I couldn't wait to be a manager of people and help people thrive within my team. But, I became a manager overnight and I didn't get any training. I got no guidance. I
Yeah.
was already extremely busy with my own workload. And suddenly I had to manage 3 people on top of that had very clear expectations of what they thought I should be giving them. But I didn't really know, how I could deliver on that, etc. So I understand the pain of that because for me, as a first time manager, like I felt that pain. So I love now that I can help first time managers, especially those in the early career space, to be a better manager and understand how to do that in a very balanced way.
And it's funny because I also remember my first time being a manager, and Sinead, I was terrible. I was terrible. So I love people. I love developing people. You know that. It's how I spend my days. But I was a total micromanager because I was so worried about getting it wrong and trying to keep all the stuff going. Everything that you've just mentioned, there's literally you're caught in the middle as a manager. You say squeeze the middle, I say caught in the middle management. And so I felt I needed to know everything at all times. And like it was really hard for me and it was really hard for the people who I was trying to look after. So again, where is that little flag that goes up that says just because this person is really skilled as an individual contributor, it doesn't mean that they can slot into management without any support. It reminds me of that book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, right? And I think we just don't spend enough time thinking about, the people who we move into different types of roles and what support they need. And I'm really glad that you're in the space and that you're doing the work for more organizations, that you're not, confined to one, because you get to touch so many now. And I think the last thing I want to highlight is you mentioned the evolving work models. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and I had to remind them we're only 3 years in to this work model. It's very new still. It's very young. It still has lots of tweaks to be made, and refinements to happen. And I think people need a little bit of patience and grace with the model, and to not give up, and to invest in the training and invest in the support. So I know you're aligned with me on that. Um,
Absolutely.
so moving on, so to my next one, right? And we're going to stick actually with first time managers and managers, okay? So how do you, in Future Roots, help those managers create a better workday? So how can you specifically help them?
Yeah, so well, the training that I mentioned earlier, which is around KPIs,
Yep.
having those constructive conversations, etc. But really, what I try to do is around mindset,
Mm.
because especially for first time managers, it is that, like you said, as an individual contributor, you're trying to manage yourself, right?
Yeah.
At your own time or your own workload, and achieve your own KPIs within the context of the team and the broader company vision, purpose, goals, etc. But then you become a manager, and sometimes people can be very resentful and say, well, actually, this is just an extra load onto
Yes.
my already busy workload, etc. So I find being a manager is about mindset. And when I became a manager, like I didn't want to be a manager. I hated when people referred to me as, their boss. I was like,
Oh
I'm not
yeah.
your boss. Like, I'm your coworker. I just happen to be the person who can give you clarity and who can give you guidance. And that's my job. And my job is to help you, achieve in work, but also to be happy in work. And I can do that by giving you clarity. Now, you may not always like the clarity I can give you, but the one thing managers can do is give clarity.
Yeah.
And that's done through strong communication. I've said earlier that's something that is a gap in manager training. So I start with mindset. I think everything's about mindset. And of course, I love the work of, Carol Dweck in terms of growth mindset and
Right.
fixed mindset. And anybody who is on, leadership training or manager training will definitely do work around mindset and the work of Carol Dweck. So I think, sometimes we forget that we control our own minds. Mindset is something we have our minds, we can decide how to set it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what I try to help managers do, to lean into this privilege almost of being able to help people, shape people, direct people. I remember during COVID, kind of the mantra of myself and my team was Albert Einstein's quote of, in every difficulty lies opportunity. So if you are seeing the difficulty in being a manager, then that's your fixed mindset. But if you're seeing the opportunity that you can have as a manager, then that's your growth mindset. So that's something that quote always stuck with me through COVID.
Mm.
Whenever we thought that things were tough, I was like, well, what's the opportunity here? And it really was just that mindset shift. So that's a lot of the work I try and do with managers, is trying to instill that into them, that they understand that when a team is struggling with a task, for example, that's your trigger to sit down with them, have that conversation, and actually have that mindset of opening up to listening to them, and then
Yeah.
also helping them find a way forward. Like I remember once, somebody from my team came to me and said, "I'm just finding it really difficult to manage my day." And we sat down and I talked to her about, Stephen Covey and the grade of like do, dump, delegate, delay, urgent, less urgent tasks. She was doing a list every morning, but the list was actually overwhelming her.
Yeah.
So when we actually layered that in with do, dump, delegate, delay, then she knew what to prioritize and bring to the top of that list. So I think that's where my role now in training managers is helping them, as you do, Niamh, in having those tools in their toolkit
Yeah.
that they can draw from when a team member asks them something like that. How do I manage my day? Because when you can do that, then, it feels great that you can help people. And it's a real game changer when you can remove those blockers for people. So the other thing that I tend to do a lot as well is around team charters. And I'm sure
Okay.
that's something, that you use as well. I found it definitely transformational around the hybrid space for me and my team at the time. So it's where I love strategy on a page. Like, I worked in marketing for 12 years in Irish Distillers, so we love a good presentation deck, but actually I now just look at strategy on a page. So instead
Yeah.
of having 40 slides, it's like, okay, how can we say this on a page? And the team charter gives that clarity to teams. And as a manager, then it gives you that clarity too and some structure to have those conversations. So typically in a team charter, like, there's plenty of templates to download online. You'll have your mission and your objectives of the company, but of your team within achieving that. You'll have, the scope of your team, what's in scope, what's out of scope for your team. Your team members, you might do work on, what understanding your super strengths. You might use DISC as a psychometric or Gallup Strengths Finder, etc. But understanding, your team members, the strengths, what you like doing, what you're good at doing, and what are the boundaries of your role. Then how do we communicate with each other? There's just so many ways now that we can communicate, especially in a hybrid world. So what's the purpose of Teams for us as a team? Do
Yes.
we use WhatsApp as a team? What's the purpose of email? Because it still has a purpose for us as a team, etc. And then of course we look at our resources and our support, our budgets, the team roles, etc. So for me, mindset is massive when it comes to the training of managers, and then helping them with something as practical as a team charter.
And I could talk to you all day about team charters, because you're right. I think they are simple but massively understated. But one thing I want to pick up on is this idea of, the manager being a good role. So like you mentioned there a little while back that you didn't want to be known as the boss because you're still a colleague, you just have a different function. Now, I would disagree with that slightly, Sinead, because I would say that a good manager, you can be a boss, right? And I wonder, because I fell into this trap, if you've bad role models, so if you don't have a great manager, if you don't have a great leader, you almost see being the boss as a bad thing, as a blocker instead of an enabler. Do you know what I mean? So you see the manager as, no, I'm not that kind of manager. No, I'm somebody who can give you clarity, who can give you support, who can communicate well with you, who can help you develop. But actually, that's being a good boss. That's being a good leader. That's being a good manager. And so what I love about the work that you're doing is not only are you developing people for their current role, but I see you creating better role models so that the next wave of employees can say, being a manager is a good thing. It's something I aspire to be. I get excited because I'm the boss, because that allows me to lead and to bring people with me. And it's no longer a negative in the workplace. It's actually a positive and something I'm really proud. I'm really happy to be able to do. Do you know what I mean? So I think the mindset is so, so important there, even shifting how we approach management and how that's seen. What do you think about that? Or do you think I'm completely wrong?
No, I think you're completely right. And for me, a manager is a guide, and a manager is a coach, and a manager is in the doing with you.
Yeah.
And we all know the distinction between a manager and a leader. And of course, part of management is leading.
Yeah.
But part of management, a big part of it is in the doing, is
Yes.
in the delivery with the people. And
Yes.
that's where I have an issue with the word boss, because boss, for me, creates a separation between you and them. Whereas, if you're in it together as a team, then, you should be equal members within that team. It's just that, like you said, I have a role where I can provide that guidance and clarity, etc. So look, we are in a massive time of change and the evolution of the way we work. By the end of this year, 27% of the workforce will be Gen Z, will be
Oh, wow.
centennials. And by the end of next year, 2026, they will have outnumbered millennials in the workplace. And I think a lot of the work I do with employers, when I talk about centennials, they think, oh, graduates, early talent. The eldest centennial is 27. They're already junior managers. They're already team leads. They're already the first time managers that I'm training, you know? So that's again where I try to help companies understand this generation that yes, they are early talent and we'll be attracting them to work in our businesses until 2030, and then alpha will come. But their alpha are about 12 for context now. The youngest, or sorry, the eldest Gen Alpha is 11, 12. So they're a little bit off joining the workforce, but not too far off. So yeah, I help organizations understand the first time managers tend to be Gen Z. And they have those different set of expectations that I talked about earlier. So they are shaping the future of work and they're shaping the now of management. So you have centennials now for the first time managing centennials. And if organizations don't understand how to attract these guys in as graduates, they certainly don't know how to develop them as managers. So yeah, look, it's a very interesting time in the evolution of work. But the biggest thing I see in terms of the manager space and first time managers in particular is the company not understanding that it's a different generation that are now managers. They aren't millennials, they aren't Xers, they aren't boomers. The boomers actually are retiring more and more. What were the boomers' strengths? Well, those strengths were human skills. If we think of centennials and the youngest generation to the workforce, what are their strengths? Digital. So what we're losing at one end of an organization is our human skills. What we're gaining at the other end is digital skills. And I think when we look at the L&D lens for companies, there's an overemphasis, I think, currently on digital skill development. And what I'm finding people coming to me more with is actually the human skills development.
Yeah.
So I think we're overemphasizing, over budgeting, over focusing on digital skills development. And we are actually losing through retirement the people who had specialized in human skills. And we're not actually making sure they're mentoring this younger generation coming in. So anyways, massive change happening. And I just love this space and helping companies to understand this space.
Sinead, I feel if we had a mic, you should drop it, honestly, because I want people to listen back to those last 2 points. They are so important. Recognizing that they are already the managers. I think a lot of people will be listening going, she's right. Oh my God, she's right. I was so busy working, I didn't realize that had already happened, because it sneaks up on you. So I think that is, you have to just listen to that again. And you are singing the same song as me in terms of the focus on human skills, but never has someone explained it so clearly in terms of the different generations and what's retiring versus what's coming in. I think that is so, so important. So I'm going to leave our listeners with that. I don't want to give them any more. I want them to really think about those 2 points because they are crucial. They are the cornerstone. Sinead, if anyone is interested in getting support from you, I'm sure everyone is interested in getting support from you. Is LinkedIn the best place to find you? Is that right?
Absolutely. So Sinead D'Arcy on LinkedIn or Future Roots.
Brilliant. And I'm going to put your details in the show notes as well. Sinead, as always, it's a pleasure. I'm going to continue talking to you after this finishes recording. We can talk for hours. But look, until next time, stay well and have a better workday.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. The Better Workday podcast is about helping you have a better workday. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. You can find our social media details as well as any references from this episode in the show notes.